Welcome to Lock It Down Sports. I'm Locke Hoover, and as always, you can follow me on Twitter at Lock It Up Media. That's Lock It Up Media on Twitter. You can also follow us at E5280 Sports. That's E5280 Sports. And today on Lock It Down Sports, is development or money more important to high school recruits? This player still is not taking ownership, and the power of the SEC is alive and well once again. But first, I want to get into this, as it's interesting enough. It's all quieted on this front about long-term contracts and the Atlanta Braves. I mean, when they first happened, it was, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. These players are taking this huge discount, really affecting their future. It minimizes the opportunity they have to make more money. And on the Braves end, it's the smart end of looking to lock up young players to buy out arbitration years. Well, and potentially players take a discount on the back end, but they get more money on the front end. There's risk for the player and the team. Perfect example of this in Atlanta. Two guys, Ron Acuna Jr. signed an 8-year, $100 million contract, and that looks like a bargain. And it is. But the key word is when he's on the field. And yes, when he's on the field. So let's just look at the last 5 years, okay? We're going back the last 5 years. So 2020, the COVID year, 60 possible games. He played 46. In 2021, played 82 games, torn ACL. 2022, played 119 games while recovering from a torn ACL. 2023, obviously, had the historic season, 40-70 season, 159 games, MVP. 2024, this year, 49 games, torn ACL. So let's project 2025. I'm just going to say 140 games. You know what? It might be 120 to 140 games, because he did tear his ACL a little bit earlier this time, unfortunately. So around that time, so out of between 2020 and 2024, out of the possible 708 games, Acuna only played 455 games. That's a 64% clip. 64% clip signing this 8-year, $100 million contract. And I get it. That's tough. That's tough to swallow. And there's the risk of buying out some of the arbitration years and most of all the arbitration years in the Braves since. They might not have to be paying him that much because of his injuries coming up in 2025, and then in 2022 and 2021, coming off those torn ACLs and recovering time, he wouldn't have had to play. The Braves wouldn't have had to, probably, I would guess, venture to beat him in arbitration. Maybe they come to a deal. Maybe they lose, but I feel like there's a good chance the Braves would have won an arbitration some of those years because of the injury factor to Ronald Acuna. That right there just shows the risk of buying out some arbitration years. Now, I still agree with what the Braves did. I mean, Ronald Acuna is a generational talent who loves baseball. All he wants to do is play baseball. That's all he wants to do. He goes and plays winter ball in a few games for his home country in Venezuela. Why? He loves baseball. That's what he wants to do. That's all he wants to do is play ball. Which you love that. You love that passion, the giddy up from him from the get-go. And speaking of someone who loves baseball and the generational talent that Ronald Acuna is, this is from Sarah Langs. So only 2 players in MLB history have 140 plus homers and 170 plus stolen bases before turning 27. So obviously one of the oldest is Ronald Acuna with 165 home runs, 196 stolen bases. The other, Mike Trout, 231 homers, 186 stolen bases. Generational talents who have gotten injured, and it's tough pill to swallow. And I hope for their sake, it's not a what could have been career. They're still going to have good numbers and have a good career, but what could have been career, it's screaming with both these guys, Acuna and Mike Trout. But that's back to Ronald Acuna. That is some of the risk of buying out arbitration years and giving that big deal, a reasonable deal. And they also, when it comes to deals and buying out contracts, Spencer Strider, talking about the bargain that the Braves got on Spencer Strider. Maybe due to the injury factor. Strider signed a 6-year contract worth $75 million, bought all of his arbitration in 2 years of free agency. But when you look at that, let's dive in a little bit more here. So in year 1, 20 starts, 31 games as a rookie. Then in year 2, when he signed that contract, 32 starts, so a full season. Coming into year 3, this is year 3, 2 starts, Tommy John, out for the year. Year 4, recovering from Tommy John, so we probably won't see him next year. Maybe a start late, or maybe he comes out and pitches out of the bullpen come postseason time, September, maybe. But I'm not counting on anything next year. So that's another year out. Year 5. Let's say 20 starts, 15 to 20 starts of that year. And then year 6, hopefully you get 32 starts. You're 2 years now removed from fully healthy Tommy John surgery, your second Tommy John surgery. I know he's putting on the brace and he's getting some cleaned up and some scope, but that's still a year plus recovery time. So hopefully 32 starts, the 6th year of that contract. And that's not counting that year 6 where he might get nicked up. He might have to have a few starts on the IL because he's pitching a full season. He's pitching 32 starts. So now 3 years of that contract extension, you're not going to get 32 starts from him. This year, next year, and then year 5, you may get 25 starts. Between those 3 years, obviously you got 2 starts this year, out next year, and then in year 5, and I just say conservatively, maybe 20 starts. 25. Maybe. I'd even say conservatively back to 15. And with that, is he back to 300 strikeout, 250 strikeout Spencer Strider? Does he get that? Is he back to normal? See, the long-term deals, buying out free arbitration years, giving them a lot of money up front and then some back end. See right here with these two studs, the risk that is involved. It's good on both ends. Acuna and Spencer got their money a lot earlier due to the pre-arbitration, but then on the back end, the Braves are going to be missing some production because they're going to be on the injured list. So there's a lot of risk reward here when it comes to long-term deals. And then also with the risk reward, talking about the risk of not going to spring training in the form of Blake Snell. So obviously, he missed all of spring training, came back, and is now back on the IL. During this season, 0-3, a 9.51 ERA, 23 2/3 innings, and allowed 32 hits. Obviously, that's not good. I don't know if you saw his comments or not. So he comments and says, "You have to go to spring training. It's important. You think?" He didn't say that you think. I added that. He also followed up and said, "I hope teams see that." That last part there is the interesting comment of "I hope teams know that spring training is important." You don't say, huh? I think teams know that. That's why spring training has happened since when? The beginning of time? I think the frustrating thing to me would be if I'm a Giants fan, is he didn't say it's his fault. And he still is happy and okay with the way things have turned out. Why? Because Scott Boras is still his agent. In his comments, he never mentioned anything about Scott Boras, didn't blame him. To me, also, based on his tone and his body language, he didn't sound remorseful, especially since he signed this 3-year deal with 3 opt-outs, which puts him in a good spot. Since he's having this kind of year, he won't opt out. And if he was having a good year, he would have he would have opted out. I don't think he's going to opt out based on how this year's going. And obviously, of course, he's not going to opt out. Or if he signed a 1-year deal somewhere, he wouldn't receive this kind of money that he's getting. And he'll probably end up finishing out the deal. At least the Giants will give him for another year. To me, this is like if you have a big sales pitch to a client and your sales team, you don't show up for their pre-show meetings, the meetings, all the conversations, the PowerPoint slides, the direction you're going, and then you bomb this sales presentation, and you tell your team that, guys, remember, prep's important. It's important to prepare for these meetings and these sales pitches to get these clients, guys. Remember that. It's important, okay? But then you end up not apologizing. That would rub me the wrong way. It really would irritate me a lot. Also, just a little side note, the other Scott Boras client who missed all of spring training but did go to the minor leagues was Jordan Montgomery. He's 3-3 with a 5.48 ERA, 44 1/3 innings pitched, 54 hits allowed. Just some context there, a little bit more of spring training being missed by these pitchers and how it can affect pitchers. He hasn't come any comments. He hasn't made any excuses. Hasn't on the IL or anything, but just a sidebar there of how important spring training really is, especially for pitchers to get a judgment of their stuff, to continue to get stretched out and actually see big league hitters as opposed to just minor leaguers. It's important, guys, in case you didn't know. Now, I thought this was probably interesting too, down in Destin for the SEC meetings. where the SEC is once again flexing their muscle, in charge, and can do really whatever they want. So the SEC has considered in the past to go to 9 conference games, and they've talked about it. They still haven't. They didn't last year, and they aren't again this year. It's still going to be at 8. Disney asked them, "Would you be willing to go to 9 games?" And SEC's like, "Yeah, we'll do that, but you got to pay us for them. You got to pay us that extra money for that package." And that seems to be like the only reason why they would do it at this point. To me, I mean, the conference does not have to, because they still will get into every playoff scenario there is. A 10-2 team in the playoffs, in the playoff era of the 12-team playoffs, is getting in. I mean, you can just book it, especially an SEC team, 10-2, they're getting in. It's a lock. So the SEC and ACC are the 2 conferences that play 8. The Big 10 and the Big 12 play 9. I think some of the rub of this is, so the SEC schools would have to give up a guaranteed home game and all the revenue for the conference home game every other year. They set their prices, they get all the revenue, everything every year that's a home game that they play Kent State or Akron or Colorado State in their home stadium. Well, obviously, if it's you take that game away, it's every other year you get additional home game. All that money, all that revenue, the SEC wants to be compensated for their losses. And I believe this is all on the ESPN, really. It's in their court because the SEC has total control to do whatever they want to continue to flex their muscle. Like, look, we're the SEC. We don't need to go to 9 games. I mean, the 12-team playoff will kind of give it a better understanding of the layout, but they did just fine with the 14 playoff. What makes you think they're not going to do fine with a 12-team playoff with schools getting in while still playing 8 conference games? They don't have to. They can do whatever they want, and they will continue to do whatever they want and determine the price that ESPN and its family of networks pays for that additional conference game. Speaking of being paid, I saw this survey come out this week, actually. It was talking about NIL survey, talking to high school kids about the NIL. And 36 blue chip prospects. So 36, the blue chip prospects are your 4 and 5 star guys. Took a survey and said their NIL package ranged from $200,000 to $600,000, and the median of that was $400,000. It's insane. So 12 of the 22 recruits said they would take less than the largest NIL offer. And here's why. They would take less. The 2 biggest factors were cultural fit and NFL development outweighed a larger payday. When I read that, I go, that's great. Some kids see the big picture. They understand what the ultimate goal, what the ultimate prize is. You want to be that 1% to have a lasting career in the NFL. You want to be the one of one guys that make it to the league and is able to have a sustainable NFL career. And I'm happy that some high school kids understand the development aspect, at least for the blue chippers. Now, what I would really love to hear more answers from other guys. Granted, this is a small sample size, of course. I would love to hear about the 3-star kids who has, let's say, offers from Baylor, Texas Tech, Boston College, and Indiana. Where's he going? All similar programs. Or is he going to the highest offer? Is he saying, know what? These programs are all about equal. The facilities are better at some than the other, etc. You know what? I'm going to go to Texas Tech. I'm going to go to Indiana. I don't obviously I don't know. I don't see that the case as much of, okay, Baylor, Texas Tech, Boston College, Indiana, all similar. I'm going to the highest bid. Others now. So let's say another 3-star kid, but he's got offers from Tennessee, Oregon, Oklahoma, Florida State, Penn State, among others. All very similar level programs to consider. Does it come down to culture, fit, and development, or is it money? Still 3-star kid, especially say one of those kids might have to sit for 2 years, then hits a transfer portal. Does that development help him at another school, or does that development allow him to get on the field at Tennessee as a junior or a redshirt sophomore? I would love to hear from some of those kids about the NIL offers and the decision-making process on that. So also in this survey, in this article, I was talking about NIL breakdown. And as you would probably imagine and probably guess, the highest NIL receivers are quarterback, offensive line, and defensive line. Quarterback makes sense. Offensive line, I would guess your left tackle. Defensive lineman, I think that could be either or a disruptive tackle or a defensive end. But after seeing that, I go, know what? That makes a lot of sense. And know what it sounds like? It sounds like the NFL type model, where it's the quarterbacks that are always the highest paid and the salary cap. Then it's your defensive end and your tackles. Throw the ball, get for the quarterback, protect your quarterback, get after your quarterback, defensive end. And I get it. Not surprising. And if there is a salary, this salary cap that's been talked about for the NIL, I could see that being very much of the same as well of how a breakdown or structure would be. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at Lock It Up Media. That's Lock It Up Media on Twitter. Also, check us out at E5280 Sports. That's E5280 Sports. You've been listening to Lock It Down Sports. I'll talk to you next week.